Okay, couple of things to note off before I begin the actual video. Firstly, if you hear anything in the background, that's because 1, my window is open, and 2, my fan is literally keeping me cool in my back in the background, so I apologise for that. Secondly, I usually have a lighting equipment on during these video segments, but I didn't want to put it on for 3 reasons. 1, it is the height of summer in the United Kingdom. 2, it is bloody hot because of that. I can feel the flesh melting from my bones. And 3, that lighting equipment warms this room up like no tomorrow. So please understand, I don't want to sweat during my videos. Right, with all that out of the way, let's actually get on to the video, shall we? Oh my god. That's the last time I fight a heavily armoured human being. Did he cut my hair? Oh. I wonder what... Bollocks. I think it's pretty apparent to some people to know that despite what your thoughts are on the third movie, the Mummy movies were massively successful, fun and enjoyable, and it's mainly helped by its brilliant cast. But let's be real, it's primarily because of Brendan Fraser. But regardless of all that, because of how big the movie series got, it was almost inevitable for video game adaptations to be made. And here they are. Except that one. That belongs in the trash. So let's not waste any more time and get right into the game, because, you know, it has been 3 months. Also, I'd like to point out once more that I'm only going into some detail on the games, as I don't want to spoil too much for everyone else, just in case you wanted to play these games yourself. First up is The Mummy for the original PlayStation, and let me tell you, oh boy, it is definitely very much a rushed movie tie-in game. Now, while I agree there are some good movie tie-in games out there, like Toy Story 2, Spider-Man 2, and, can't think of another one. But they do tend to be rushed out, and let's be honest here, not the greatest upon release. Which is where this game comes in. I'll get the graphics out of the way first, as wow, this hasn't aged well. But since this is a PlayStation 1 game, I'm going to give it a little slack, as let's be real here, nearly all original PlayStation games haven't stood the test of time. Especially when the game has the actor's face on the pixelated characters, giving us more nightmares than the main villain did. Now, I will say in some parts of the game, the graphics for the levels do help to give the area you're in a very creepy Egyptian tomb setting, and can make you think twice before jogging around the corner. Kind of making the draw distance work in some parts, surprisingly. Speaking of jogging, let's talk about the animations on the characters. For whatever reason, the developers decided to give Rick's character some interesting movements. Like his dodge roll could cover a few football fields, his back walk makes me feel like I'm reversing a lorry, and his spring jump makes me miss the Mario sound effect. As for Rick's walk, kind of looks like he has something up his arse, or his trousers are on too tight. Wait, that's the same thing. The game primarily takes place in Hamunaptra, as the developers of the game made sure to cheat their way through this as much as possible by leaving only a few levels to design, like dark nights, dark caves, and dark tombs. There's a pattern here, I'm sure. You do go around collecting things, but if I'm honest, they ain't really worth your time. I feel like the only saving grace about this game is the loading screens, as there are some that are pretty awkward and kind of comical.
You always did have more guts than brains, O'Connell. Yes, my prince.
And some that are, to the game's credit, downright creepy. I need a new set of trousers! Now on to the voices, and, well, okay, I'm not gonna lie here. I felt like I was watching a very awkward porno throughout most of it.
Here, I found another piece.
Oh, well done. Now let's see what this does.
Also, the voice actor who portrays Rick sounds like he just came out of an alcoholic-induced coma.
This is for you. I had to, you know, face certain death to get that for you. I can see a couple of exits out of this place.
I'm going to...
Stay here. If you're here to tell me I've screwed up, you can save your breath.
Now, do forgive me for sounding a little bit hypocritical here, but I'm a little surprised and sad to see that this game doesn't really hold up well next to its movie. As there were a lot of things that they could have added from the movie into the game, like for instance, they could have added the aeroplane fight scene with the sandstorm or even the car chase scene, but they're not in it. And why are the Americans cut from the game entirely? Because they were really good in the movie, and it saddens me that they're not in it. I will say that the game kind of reminds me of the original Tomb Raider, as not only are you exploring tombs, no surprise, but also the game has tank controls, guns, and a...
Whoa, wait just a second there, mister. Your mother and I would like a word.
Oh god, what now?
That's right, it is I, Steve of Warr, Tomb Raider expert. What do you mean, what now?
Well, no offense, Steve, but you are the 4th YouTuber who has invaded my videos.
And
you know, I'm beginning to think that this is becoming a thing because one popped up to correct me on my mistakes, the other was here because, well, it was Lupin the Third, and the other kicked my ass 3 months ago.
What?
So, what is next? Does that mean there's going to be a random Petronious appearance any second now?
Oh, no thanks, Whalley. I'm good. I'm kind of busy with, I'm kind of busy with the stuff,
Oh, thank you. Just get on with your bit, get on with it. God, it's hot out here.
Just picking up where Whalley left off there for a second, this game is pretty much doing an exact copy and paste in terms of gameplay. You go around the tomb collecting pointless collectibles, beating and shooting bad guys with terrible aim mechanics, and battling the supernatural and terrifying monsters. But whilst Tomb Raider succeeded in that category with teaching you the mechanics early in Croft Manor and allowing the player to have plenty of room to get used to them, most of the time, the Mummy butchers this by placing the player in very tight corridors and making the enemies a pain in the arse to kill, especially when they gang up on you. And that camera. My god, that camera. The number of unfair deaths that you get in this game because of this camera can be downright criminal at times. And to really throw this game under the bus a bit more, by the time this game came out, 5 Tomb Raider games had already been released and pretty much fixed the problems that they originally had, giving the players a much better and improved gameplay experience. So, this game really has no excuse for playing this bad.
Huh, that was a lot more informative than I thought.
Yeah, not bad. Although you'd be surprised at how many games have actually tried to copy the Tomb Raider formula over the years and in various different ways.
Yeah, well, true that. Alright, thanks Steve.
I mean, Uncharted is the biggest one out there, but there was also The Last of Us, Bioshock Infinite, Horizon Zero Dawn, Barbie Horse Rider, Metal Gear Solid, Cooler World, Croc 2, Legend of the Gobbo.
Back to business.
As mentioned by the legendary Steve, nearly every time you move somewhere, 9 times out of 10, you'll find yourself stuck on something or die to an unexpected thing. For instance, to progress, you'll need to shoot a chain off this thing, and then... What? Yeah, unfair deaths are everywhere in this game, so be prepared. Okay, time to move on, I think, as my sanity can take so much.
Now for... Ooh, the sun went away. That's unusual. Tell you what, let's actually fix it up. Just for you. You know, going back on my word here, but it'll look better. Much better. By the way, if I start sweating because of the heat outside and the light being on, I'm blaming you guys. Just so you know. Following the success of the first movie, it was almost inevitable that a sequel would be made, and of course came... The Mummy 2 for the PS2. It's still terrible. Oh god, what is wrong with me?
This game is probably the most easiest game to find out of all of them, as the original Mummy game you'd find pretty much on eBay and pricing at the what the hell price, while this one can be found in any second-hand store, much like the next one I'll be talking about. Right, onto this game, and I'll be honest, this game surprised me with how much replayability it has. as at the beginning you can choose either Rick or Imhotep to play in the game as, meaning you're going to get 2 different endings. That's insane for a movie licensed game. Granted, I haven't played a lot of games from movies in recent years due to how crappy they can be, but it just shocked me how they put something like this in. Now, taking the Rick O'Connor route, you just get the movie's main plot with a few added gameplay to mix things up. While as Imhotep, it's the same plot, but he wins and everyone dies. Not gonna lie, this game was pretty cool to play thanks to this optional choice to pick 2 characters and allowing the plot to diverge like this. But sadly, that's where my compliments for this game kind of pitters out, as the rest is kind of clunky. Control-wise is a bit better than the previous title, but Rick and Imhotep still feel a bit stiff on a few bits. Combat is something else. As for Imhotep, you mainly use a sword in some parts, but you can use his powers, but they're mostly for certain parts and are pretty context sensitive. Rick does what he does best, and that's shooting things. While this game is definitely an improvement over the previous version, I found myself not enjoying it as much as I thought I would, playing as either the hero or the villain for that matter, as missions tended to be a copy and paste on top of each other, apart from a few variances, including, of course, the differentiating storylines. One thing I'd like to point out, while the first game had a very similar feel to Tomb Raider game in some parts, the sequel actually tries to make you feel like playing an actual Tomb Raider game, from its item slots to some of its gameplay mechanics. Now, while one could be at times clunky but got better and more refined over time as explained earlier, the other simply copied and pasted it and called it a day. Also, and if I may go off script a little bit here, the voice actress for Evelyn sounded so familiar to me for ages and I just couldn't place it. Until I rewatched this movie and found out that she was also the voice of Fawn, with the only difference being that one has an English accent while the other is an American.
I can hardly make out a single hieroglyph, and yet something tells me I've seen this all before, as if in a dream.
Yeah, right. Sally McKnight, 1/16th blood on my mother's side. And that ritual you saw was just peppermint and cloves to soothe my vocal cords. You think it's easy singing this stuff?
Edit one video for another YouTuber and it never leaves you. Right, I think I've said about enough about this game, so let's move on to the final game. Now, out of all the games that I've talked about on today's video, this is the game that I played constantly when I was younger. I know technically this isn't a Mummy game per se because it isn't in the title, but since the character is involved in the second Mummy movie, I think it still counts. The Scorpion King, Rise of the Akkadian. And like the movie it's based on, it's a prequel for that same movie. And, to be honest, it's actually quite a fun one. Yep. It's one of those games where it's based off the movie, but has an original story attached to it. So it's a prequel for the prequel. Wait, is the Scorpion King a prequel? Is it? I don't care. Honestly, I was just surprised that they took this approach and The Rock himself reprising his role for the game. But only in the cutscenes, as when you play the game, I don't know, the grunts don't sound like Dwayne. Guess he wasn't as committed to this as he was these games. Now, I will say this about the game before I continue. It was the funnest out of the 3. Yeah, I will agree that the control isn't the best and the combat is... interesting. But there was something about this game that kept my attention for longer than the previous 2, and there's something rather fun about it that I just can't quite put my finger on why. It could be that this game feels a little more polished, it could be that this game tries to explain the backstory of Matthias before he became the hero/villain, or it could be because of The Rock's bloody pecs. I mean, just look at those things!
Oh my god, you could grind meat on it. Ah!
But I digress. While I did admit that this game was more fun to play, I have to say that in 100% honesty, without The Rock being in this game, it can be completely forgettable in some parts. I mean, the main bulk of the game is after a mission that goes badly, Matthias goes to his village and sees that everyone is dead. So he sets out to avenge the slaughter of his village and rescue his brothers from a guy called Magos, who simply wants to summon the god Set to rule the world. I would normally call bullcrap on things like this, but since this game and movie are connected to the Mummy movies and they battle supernatural things in each installment, I could also mention that the cartoon series did, but I never watched it, so we'll put that aside for now. So yeah, I'll give the game some slack for it. Now, since the video is kind of long enough as it is, I'm going to finish this off by saying that out of all 3 games, the Scorpion King one is my favourite. while the Mummy games kind of fell short. But the second Mummy game does get points for trying something I haven't experienced in a movie tie-in game before by letting you play as the villain. If you're curious to try all 3 of these games out, you can pretty much find them online, or you can find them in your local secondhand game store. Oh boy, that was eventful. Oh, I wonder what I should do next. I mean, there's so... Right on cue! Huh. Huh. Could have sworn. Ho ho ho! Well now, things are gonna get crazy.
God damn, it's empty! Why?